Hello everyone, this is Junaid here from Edureka and I welcome you all to this interesting session on full stack web development using Django. So without any further ado, let's take a look at today's agenda. We'll start this session by discussing what is meant by full stack development. Following that, I'll be walking you through Python's web framework that is Django. Moving ahead, I'll be also speaking about its features, working, and also the advantages of Django over the other framework. And once we are done with all of this theoretical part, we'll also see the installation of Django and see how we can create a simple interface with it. Before we begin, do consider subscribing to our YouTube channel to stay updated on trending technologies. And also, if you're looking for online training certification in Django, check out the link given in the description box below. So what exactly is full stack development? Well, a full stack developer is a person who can develop both client-side and a server-side software. In addition to mastering HTML and CSS, he or she also have a knowledge on front-end development using frameworks like AngularJS, Node.js, or Vue, which uses JavaScript. Apart from that, they have knowledge on backend development using languages like Python, Node, ASP.NET, PHP, and they are also well aware of working with database systems like SQL, SQLite, MongoDB, to name a few. When we are speaking about full stack development, a term web framework pops up every time. So what exactly is web framework? Well, a web framework or web application framework is a software framework that is designed to support the development of web application including web services, web resources, and web APIs. Web framework provides a standard way to build and deploy web application on World Wide Web, that is the internet. Web frameworks aim to automate the overhead associated with common activities performed in web application development. I'm sure you might now be wondering how many web frameworks do we have? Well, guess what? We have a lot, and I mean a lot of web frameworks, each of which have the unique characteristics. Web frameworks are language specific. Some of the popular web frameworks are Spring MVC, which makes use of Java. Then we have React, making use of JavaScript. And then we have Django, which is considered as a state-of-the-art web framework in Python. These were a few of the popular web frameworks in the market. Moving ahead, let us discuss Python's popular framework that is Django. So what exactly is Django, right? Well, Django is web application framework written in Python programming language. It is based on MVT design pattern. You might be wondering what is MVT, right? Well, MVT stands for Model View Template. It is maintained by Django Software Foundation, an American independent organization which was established as a 501 nonprofit. Django is in very high demand due to its rapid development features, which means that it takes less time to build an application after collecting clients' requirements. This framework uses a famous tagline that is, the web framework for perfectionists with the deadlines. By using Django, we can build web applications in a very little time, and the reason for this is because Django handles much of the configuration things automatically, so we can focus on application development only. With so much hype about Django, you might be wondering why Django and how Django is different from other frameworks. So let us now talk about its advantages. You see, starting off with one of the most powerful feature of Django, that is Object Relational Mapper. This enables you to interact with your database like you would with SQL. As a matter of fact, Django's ORM is a Pythonic way to create SQL to query and manipulate your database and get results in a Pythonic fashion. Starting off with one of the most powerful features of Django, that is Object Relational Mapper. You see, Object Relational Mapper enables you to interact with your database like you would using an SQL. In fact, Django's ORM is a Pythonic way to create SQL to query and manipulate your database and get results in a Pythonic fashion. The next advantage that we have is a tight integration. You see, Django provides a set of tightly integrated components. All of these components have been developed by the Django team themselves. You see, Django was originally developed as an in-house framework for managing a series of new ordinate websites. Later, its code was released on the internet and Django team continues its development using an open source model. Because of its roots, Django's components are still designed for its integration, reusability, speed from the very beginning. Then we have administration interface. You see, Django provides a default admin interface that can be used to perform, create, read, update, and delete operation on model directly. It reads a set of data that explains and gives information about data from the model to provide an instant interface where the user can adjust the contents of the application. Then we have multilingual support. Django supports multilingual websites through a built-in initialization system. Using this, we can integrate multiple languages into a Python Django framework. This is helpful for those people who are working on websites with more than one language. So now that you know what is Django, let's see some of its features. You see, first off, as I've mentioned earlier, Django supports rapid development. You see, Django was designed with the intention to make framework that takes less time to build a web application. The project implementation phase is very time taken, but Django creates it rapidly. Then we have security. Django takes security seriously and helps developers to avoid many common security mistakes such as SQL injection, cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, and many more. Its user authentication system provides a secure way to manage user accounts and passwords. Then we have scalability. You see, Django is scalable in nature and it has the ability to quickly and flexibly switch from small to large-scale application projects. Then moving ahead to fully loaded. You see, Django includes various helping task modules and libraries which can be used to handle common web development tasks. Django takes care of its authentication, content administration, sitemaps, RSS feed, and many more. Finally, coming down to versatility. Django is versatile in nature, which allows it to build applications for different domains. You see, nowadays companies are using Django to build various types of applications like content management system, social network site, or specific computing platforms. With Django being so popular, let's take a look at big tech companies who are using this framework. Starting off with YouTube. These video sharing platforms need no introduction. Earlier, this site was developed on PHP, but the YouTube team felt the need to improve its performance and add new functionalities in it. Continuous rapid audience growth forced the YouTube team to choose Django framework, and the choice was fully justified. You see, Django helped the YouTube team of developers, allowing team to act quickly and flawlessly. They use this framework to implement new features and to maintain the speed of the website. The next big company that is utilizing Django is Instagram. Again, this site needs no introduction. You see, Instagram is the fastest growing photo and video sharing app, which is quite popular in the world today. The Kevin and Mike, the co-founders of Instagram, developed the first version of this app using Django. It was super easy to work with Django and it didn't require a lot of decisions and setups. Every day, Instagram users add 95 million photos and give 4.2 billion likes under the picture and videos. Django helped Instagram to scale the application, process huge amount of data, and manage great number of interaction between every single second. The ready-to-implement solution available in Django allowed the team to focus on UI and UX of the app instead of worrying about the backend technology that makes it work. And the popular application is Spotify. This music streaming app changed the way people listen to, share, and purchase music. The huge library of this application is accessible anywhere and on any device. It contains vast amount of data, and to handle this data, the application uses Python alongside Django. There were mainly two reasons for Spotify to choose this framework. First off, the faster backend, and second thing was machine learning options. Finally, coming down to Pinterest. Pinterest is yet another popular social media platform that allows its user to find ideas like recipes, home, and style inspiration. Pinterest has over 2.5 million monthly active users, so the website has to deal with a heavy load of users. To ensure excellent performance, website uses Django. Django provides ability to scale effectively without affecting its speed. Django's backend system has helped the developers to manage the website, allowing its users to follow each other and share boards and pins. With this type of hype, now you might be curious about how Django works, right? Well, Django is made up of series of components that help it receive and respond to user requests. Here is a quick overview. The way web application works is by request and response. Request is nothing but the user telling a framework that is looking for a certain application. Thus, the user provides a URL pattern. The pattern over here is nothing but an URL. Django accepts this URL and processes it and giving out a response. That is HTML, which is needed by a web browser to render a page. This page can be a plain text or something more richer. The key component over here is views. Views take in URL and processes it. And whichever URL pattern is matched by the application, that particular application function gets activated. And then this application function will return an HTML page. So what exactly is these views? Well, Django views are a custom Python code that are executed when a certain URL is accessed. Views can be as simple as returning a string of text to the user. They can also be made more complex by querying a database, processing form, and processing credit card details. Once a view is done processing, a web response is provided back to the user. So why do we need a web response? You see, it wouldn't be helpful if the user made a request to an application and don't see a response in return. When a user accesses a URL in a browser, what it shows in a window is a web response. Most often this is HTML page showing a combination of text and images. These pages are created using Django's templating system. As you can see over here in the diagram, the model over here is responsible for dealing with our database, and template contains all the HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap code. And the view over here is responsible for taking URL as an input and then executing the activation function. So now that we know how Django works, let me quickly show you how to install Django on our system. So to install Django, I'll be making use of Anaconda. The reason why I'm using Anaconda is because I obviously don't want to install Django throughout my system. So I'm going to create a virtual environment here. So to do that, all I'm going to do is conda create -n, provide a virtual environment name, and then following that, we'll give the Python version and then hit enter. Make sure you click yes over here and it will download a couple of packages. Here I'm going to use Python 3.8. As you can see, I have mentioned that over here. So it's installing Python 3.8 on our virtual environment. This might take a minute or two, so please be patient. All right, so as you can see here, we have successfully created our virtual environment. So now the next stage, we are supposed to activate our virtual environment. So to do that, I'm going to use conda activate the name of our virtual environment, that is Django demo. And let me hit enter. Okay, as you can see here, we have successfully entered into this particular environment. So let me clear the screen now. Okay, so this is how we can create our virtual environment. And now to install Django, I'm going to use this pip installer, pip install Django, and then hit enter. All right. So here we have successfully installed Django on our system. As of now, the version of Django that we have installed is Django 3.2. All right, so now that we have successfully installed Django on our system, let's see how we can create our first Django project and also see how we can create our first Django application. So to do that, let me move back to my code editor here. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm create a folder here, mkdir, and give the name of this folder as Django. Or what we'll do is let's give the name over here as project, and then we'll hit 1 and then hit enter. And then let's enter into this particular folder here, cd project 1, and now we are going to create a project. Okay, so now to create a project, what we are going to do is we're going to just have something like the command django -admin, then we'll have start project, and following that, what I'm going to do is give a project name. So let's say something like demo. So the demo is a project name, and then after this we are going to hit enter. Okay, so it doesn't say anything over here. So let's go to this particular folder and see what it has for us. All right, so as you can see, I'm present inside this particular demo project. And as you have seen, right, so I just created this project folder in front of you, project 1. And as soon as I hit the command, you can see we have this particular folder. And inside this folder, we have manage.py and also another couple of files, that is init, and then we have settings, URLs, WSGI, and assign. Okay, so now what we'll do is we're going to our code editor and let's see how we can implement this. First off, you can choose any code editor you want. The code editor of my choice over here is going to be Visual Studio Code. So let me quickly open that. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is just type here open folder and go to the folder that we want to open. So it's going to be E drive, and then we have project 1. Okay, and we're going to go select folder. Okay, so as you can see here, within this project folder, we have another folder which says demo, and now we are going to have another folder over here called demo and the manage.py. So let me do one thing. Let me directly get into this project folder, that is a demo folder. So let me get inside project and let me hit enter and select this as our folder. So as you can see here, we have this demo folder, and within this we have another folder here, and it has all these components. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change a Python interpreter here. So let me get down here and let me add the Python interpreter that we have created. So that's going to be Django. Okay, so let me quickly search that out. Okay, so as you can see here, we have our Django interpreter here, the one which we have created. Okay, so this is how we can create our project. So over here we'll have init file. This is the file which we usually don't touch. This is basically used to globalize all of these to make this demo over here as a package. And now we have a couple of other things. We have urls.py. This is responsible for taking in and exchanging URLs with our application. Then we have settings.py. This is where we'll be providing all the settings of our application. And finally, we have manage.py. Manage.py is a folder where we will not be touching it. This is something which we use to run our application, like Django application. So now that we have created our first project, what I'm going to do is we'll create our first application. So, but before that, let's see what happens if I run our server. All right, so to run our server, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here. I'm going to get inside my demo folder. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to run a simple command which says Python, that is manage.py. I hope you remember this manage.py, right? So this manage.py is a folder which is present here. And now just to run our server or the local host, what I'm going to do is run server and hit enter. So this gives us the default server over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go to my Chrome and paste it over here. So as you can see, we have nothing over here, but you can see that we are now our application is working fine. Now, if you don't want to run on this particular port number, right? So you can also change your port number. So this can be easily done. So for that, let me first stop my server here. So now what I'm going to do is after doing this Python manage.py run server, I'm going to give a port number, like let's say 888, and let me hit enter. Okay. And now you can see here, before it was 8,000, right? And now our port number is going to change. It's going to be 8,888. Let me refresh this. You will see this won't run anymore. Okay. And instead of that, if I replace the zeros with 8 over here, that is this, you will see that our page is working totally fine. So this is how you create your own project. So now moving ahead, now what I'm going to do is I want to create our first application. Okay, so to create our first application, what I'm going to do here is, first off, let me stop my server. Okay, so to create your first application, what I'm going to do is Python. And now we have that command manage.py. But before that, let me quickly clear the screen. Okay, so I'm going to do this Python manage.py. Okay, and now we need something called a start app. This is a command. And now we are going to give the app name. So we'll give first app, or let's say our first app. Okay, before I execute this command, let me quickly go to my code editor. As you can see here, we have just one file, right? We have this demo. Okay, this is one folder. And then we have manage.py file. And this is something which got added up. So now what I'm going to do is, let me hit this command. Let me hit enter over here. Okay, nothing happened. We didn't see any line of code, but let me go back to our code editor. And let me refresh this. So you will see here that we have this particular application. So this is nothing but our first app. And this first app has migrations, which is basically used for database. And then we also have views, test, models, apps, admin, and many more. Okay. So now what we are going to do is we are supposed to add this first app to our settings folder over here. Okay. And if you don't add this app, that is our first app, to our setting folder, this Django application will not be able to recognize it. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for this main folder, that is a project folder, and go for settings.py. And here we'll have this option of adding our application. So as you can see here, installed apps, right? So now let us install our apps. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just provide the name of this particular folder. So let me just go here, copy relative path. Let me just paste it over here and give a comma and save this up. All right, so this is how you can add up your first app. And now to spice things up, let's do one thing. Let's create a simple project wherein we can render this particular output. We can render hello world on our web page. Okay, so to do that, first off, we need to go to views. Okay, so in the views folder, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have to create a function. So if you remember what I've said earlier, so basically we have views. Okay, and views is something which is used to process the URLs, and then it returns back the response. Okay, so first off, we'll have a function here. We'll say, let's take something like we'll give the random name. So we'll say my app, and this will have something called as request. Okay. So what this basically saying is this particular function accepts the request. And now what I'm going to do is we'll say we'll have D is equal to, let's display the current date and time. Okay. So we'll have date time. Okay. And in order to use this date time, I obviously have to import it. So I'll import it, import date time. Okay. So now we have imported our date time module. And what I want to do now is dot date. We have this function date time dot now. This is to capture the current time. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is we have to return this over here, we have to return this in a form of a response, right? So as I've mentioned earlier, it takes a request, that is the URL, and it gives out a response. So the way it gives a response, you can't just return D. Okay. If you return D, it's not going to work. So you have to return this in a form of an HTML. So to do that, we use something called as HTTP response. And for this, I'm going to import from Django dot HTTP import HTTP response. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'll have HTTP response here. And inside this response, I'm going to pass an HTML string. Okay. Means it's not a string, it's an HTML code in the form of a string. So let me define S over here. So S is nothing but, let's say I want a heading tag that is H1. So I can say something like the current time is, let's take that, I'm going to add this, I'll have str, and I'm going to add D, which gives me current date and time. And then again, I will have to close this with an HTML tag. So this is going to be H1, and then close this up and make sure you have this part over here. Okay, so this function currently returns the current date and time. Now executing this alone will not make it work, because we obviously have to add this to a URL path, because it is only with a URL we can route our request to this particular function. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to my project folder, that is demo. And then over here, as you can see, we have URLs. Okay. And now first thing that I'm going to do here is add this particular thing to a path. So first off, I have a path. Okay. And now this is where I'm going to define my URL path. So my URL path over here is going to be just like, let me give it as empty. I don't want anything. And here I'm going to pass the function. The second argument over here is nothing but the function. So it's nothing but views dot the function name. Now we don't have views over here. Obviously this is going to throw off error for me. So what I'm going to do is from this particular thing over here, that is from our first app. Okay, I can see that I have made a typo here, but it's okay. So make sure you keep in mind about the typo. So import views. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this particular function over here, my app. So let me quickly get down to the URLs, views dot my first app. Or let me just copy this here and pass it here. Okay, and this is all we are supposed to do. And let me execute this quickly. So let me save this up and let me execute this. Okay, so let me now quickly move to my code editor here. And as we know, if to run this, all I'm going to do is Python manage.py run server and then hit enter. Okay, so now we have this thing ready in our localhost. Let me copy this. Okay, so I will not refresh this part. All I'm going to do is, just compare this. Okay, so now if I add this up over here and hit enter, obviously we're getting page not found. That's because we haven't added anything, any extension to this. But before that, what I would like you to see is now we are not getting this server page. Okay, so if I refresh this, we'll be getting this particular page over here. So let me refresh this over here. And now for us to see the date and time, all you need to do is hash and give the pattern, that is date, and then hit enter. So you'll see here that this is the date, and this is nothing but the function that we have defined. And if I refresh this, you'll see that the seconds are changing over here. So you can see here, now it's 10 seconds. It will now change down to 15. And again, if I wait for like 5 seconds, it will change down to 20, and so on and so forth. And an interesting thing that I would like you to see over here is in the command line. Okay, so as you can see here, every time it says get request. Okay, as you can see, it's like get date. So this is nothing but the URL that I'm passing. Okay, so the get date is nothing but me or the user telling a web server that get this particular function. And what this function over here will return is nothing but a response, that is HTTP response. And response over here can be nothing but an HTML page or a string or whatever it is. But over here, the server has nothing to do with what response it is giving. It has only to do with it's taking this particular URL is getting executed, or this particular function is this getting executed. And if this particular function is getting executed, this particular response is what we get. Okay. So now to give you a better understanding, what I'm going to do is, instead of giving this S over here, let's have one more thing. Let's say O here represents hello world. So instead of passing hello world there, I'm just going to pass directly here. Let's say hello world. Let me save this. Okay. We obviously need to restart the server here at this point. So let me close this up. Okay, automatically it's reloading the changes because it detected the changes. So let me now get back to my browser and try reloading this. You'll see here we have hello world. Okay, and similarly, now you might be wondering, like, is it possible for me to have just a single application here? Well, no, that's not the case. We can have multiple applications and we can add this to multiple URLs over here. Now, speaking about reusability, right? So one of the important things about this frameworks or frameworks in general is that they allow or enhance reusability of particular code. Now, every time I add our views, okay, every time I add the URL path from the views to this particular URL path, I mean to say the URL paths of our project, it's like the bulkiness of the code is increasing. And this is just because over here we have one page. Okay, over here I have one single app. What if I have multiple apps? So this would obviously become a pretty huge thing, right? And if I want to delete this, or someone new is coming by and he wants to understand the code, it would be pretty hard for them to understand what is happening. So instead, what I can do is I can create a URL path within our application, within our first app, and then add the URL folder of this particular app to this part over here, to the project. Okay, so let me explain you what I'm trying to say here. See, first off, we'll have a hierarchy over here. This is nothing but our project folder. And the project folder over here is the demo. Within the project folder here, we can have multiple apps. Okay. And each of these apps is capable of rendering their own web page. And web page you saw over here is like date and time, which we saw, and then we printed a hello world, right? So they are nothing but the web page. So these are multiple applications. And one such application that we have over here is nothing but our first app. So what I'm trying to say over here is, instead of having all the URLs set it in our project folder, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a URLs folder over here in our application itself, or I should say locally, and then give away in such a manner that, our project folder is aware that we have defined our URLs folder in our applications. So let me quickly show you how we can achieve this. All right. So in order to achieve this, right? So first off, we need multiple applications. So we'll create def. So let's say first, okay. And as we know, this takes a response, a request, and in return, HTTP response. And what I want over here is I'll have h1 tag here, which is a heading tag, and I'll say first. And similarly, let me close this up, h1, and let me close this. Okay, similarly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have not one, let me have like 4 or 5, right? So let me copy this and let me paste it over here. Okay, and now let me just change this from first, second. Let me change this to third, and this would be fourth. And in our next stage, we're supposed to add this. Like if you were to follow the old method, I'm supposed to add all of these methods to our application window over here in the URLs. So it's going to be views.first, views.second, views.third. But I don't want that. I want to make it as readable as possible. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for this, our first app folder. Okay. And I'm going to create this particular file called as urls.py. All right. So now we have this URLs. This is the URLs present in our application. So now what I'm going to do is from django.config.urls import URL. Okay. And another thing that I want is from, we also need these views, right? So we need these functions over here. So what I'm going to do is from our test app, that is, let me copy this up, import URLs, that is, sorry, import views. All right. Now with this imported views, I can also have all of these methods. So let me close this views as of now. Okay, let it be open. This URLs is nothing but URLs of our project folder. This is for the application folder. So let me have URL pattern. Okay, and this is going to be the list. Fine. And within this list, I'm going to pass the URL. So you can see here I have called this URL, right? So URL, and this is going to be just this, and I'll put first. Okay. And here I'm going to provide views.first. Call the method name. Okay. So let me quickly check this out. All right. So this is the first URL. Similarly, I'm going to add all 4. So let me copy this up. Views.second. At the same time, even this has to be second. And here it's going to be third. And finally the fourth. Okay. And once we are done with this, okay, let me save this up. Let me save even this views folder. Okay. All right. So now what I'm going to do is we obviously have to add all of these to our main projects folder. So to do that, first off, we'll create something similar to this. We'll have path. And inside this path, all I'm going to do is pass the name of our application. So the name of our application is our first app. So let me just copy that up. Let me just copy this up and let me paste it over here. Okay. And along with this, I also need to import some folders here. So that will be from django.config.urls import include. All right. And now what I'm going to do here is use this include method. And in this, I'm going to pass a string which says the name of our app, that is our first app, dot the folder name, that is urls. Okay, it's referring to this particular folder here. And let me quickly save this up. This thing over here has formed a link or a chain between the demo folder and the app folder. So demo folder is a project folder, and this is nothing but the application folder. Okay. And now let's run our code here. Okay. So to do that, obviously I'll be using this. Let me hit enter. Okay. And now let's go down to this particular URL. Let me copy this up and let me paste it over here. This obviously won't be working. If I reload this, it will say page not found. Okay. Or the site can't be reached. Okay. And now I'm just gonna execute this. All right, so nothing to worry, guys. We are totally right. So I'm supposed to pass this particular URL. So the URL that I'm supposed to pass over here is nothing but the name of our app. That is nothing but our first app followed by the application name. Okay, so it won't be just first. If I put first, it's not going to detect. It has to go step by step. So it's going to be like the name of our app followed by the name of our application. So let me quickly get that done. So let me copy this. So if I put this part over here, now if I do this, you will see we are getting a couple of options, right? So now all I'm going to do is put here first. So if I do this, you'll see we get this first. And this is exactly what we have defined over here. Similarly, if I put it for second, let me quickly show you that. And hit enter, you will see second, and similarly for third and fourth. And for fourth, it should represent the same thing. So let me quickly get that done and hit enter. Okay, so the interesting part, let me show you over here. Okay, so as you can see here, first thing it says get request. We have supposed to pass the URL. So first off, I passed the HTTP first app, right? So this is the URL that I passed first. So I got 404, which is nothing but the page not found. And then what I did was I passed the complete URL. So I passed the complete address for our application, that is our first app followed by the first. And this is where it gave us a response, that is HTTP. And you can see similarly it did it for first, second, third, and fourth. All right, guys, now that we have seen how to work along Django, let me quickly show you an important part that is nothing but admin login page. So in order to do that, let me first move to my code editor here and let me stop executing this code. So let me press Ctrl+C twice and clear the screen. Okay, so how do I access this admin, right? So how do I do this? So if you see over here, if I just go down to our root directory, that is just this. Okay, so for this I have to run my server. So let me quickly run my server and let me refresh this page here. So you'll see here that we have two options. We have admin as well as our first app. So what will happen if I do this? So let me add this over here and hit enter. You will see we are presented over here with a username and password. So what is this username and password and how do I log in? Okay, so in order to work with this username and password, you need to get down here and you need to create something called as super user. So let me close this server first, clear the screen, and we need to create a super user for this particular project. So to do that, we'll have py manage.py create super user and then hit enter. The reason why I'm getting this error is because first off, we have to make something called as make migrations. So let me quickly show you how we can do that. Okay. So let me quickly clear the screen and type py manage.py make migration and let me hit enter. Okay. And after this, what I'm going to do is py manage.py migrate and then hit enter. So here basically what it's trying to do is it's trying to configure all the database. As we haven't added any external database here, it's going to take in the local database that is nothing but SQLite, which is provided built in by the Django framework. So let me clear this and let us now create a super user. Okay, so now it will say create a super user. That time you saw, right, we weren't getting the command, like we weren't getting this protocol over here. So let's say we'll give here as user and let me hit enter. Now it will ask me to give an email address. You can just give a random email address. So I'll give it as user@user.com. Hit enter and I'll give the same password, user, and it'll ask us to confirm. And let me hit enter. Okay, it says password is too small, but we can bypass it and just hit enter. Yes, and yeah. So now what I'm going to do is let me run my server again. All right, and let me go back to my browser and refresh this over here. Okay, so now if you remember, we gave the name, a username over here as user, and similarly we gave the username here as user, and let me log in. So as you can see over here that we are provided over here with some page. Okay, and what does this page represents? It's nothing but a database. Okay, this is basically an admin page, and if you can see over here, it allows us to add a couple of users. We can create someone who has access to this. Apart from that, you can also add groups. And then this is exactly how this thing works. We can change our password, we can visit a site, and we can log out of this. So this is basically how the login page of this particular application works. Alright guys, with this we come to the end of our session. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new. If you have any further queries, please do mention them in the comment box below. And also if you're looking for online training certification in Django, check out the link given in the description box below. Until next time, goodbye and take care.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!